This is the second of 5 videos on Encounter Basics. Having looked at the encounter process in the previous video, we now consider its first step, the preparation of the encounter. But first, suppose that when setting out to an unknown destination, I just type some coordinates into my GPS and set off. If I'm lucky, then I'll end up at my destination on time. If not, then, lacking any feeling for the terrain, I could become hopelessly lost. I see signposts for this town and that, but I've no idea where they are. I'm in the middle of a kind of spaghetti road complex surrounded by multi-storey buildings, but my GPS insists that I'm in a meadow just crossing a stream. Now, GPS is a fine system, but the technology can disconnect me from reality. And there's an equivalent to GPS for encounter preparation. Get PowerPoint slides. It consists of planning a meeting around a slide set and then letting PowerPoint drive the proceedings. I was involved in a technical review meeting with a major customer some time back. Our preparation was extensive, with a lot of work going into the presentations. Then, when it was all over and the wine and cheese were bringing matters to a close, I asked my champion customer for some feedback. I was a bit worried that he'd been rather quiet. "Well," he said, "you spent all day telling us how brilliant you were, and so there didn't seem to be much left to say." Oops. We'd fallen into the old trap, focusing excessively on the slide set. GPS, get PowerPoint slides. As a result, the organisation of the meeting had been far too biased towards our presentations and what we wanted to tell the customer. Slides are useful, of course, but I shouldn't rely on them to manage meetings. Just as the overuse of GPS can cause me to lose touch with the physical terrain, so the get PowerPoint slides approach can cause me to lose contact with my clients. Even though I might still use slides during encounters, I use a map for preparing them. The MAP acronym provides a simple way to crystallize pre-encounter thoughts. It stands for my objectives for this encounter as an individual and for my organisation. Audience, a concerted effort to focus on the people I'll meet, anticipating their questions and concerns and understanding their organisation's strengths and weaknesses. And a plan suited to the occasion. This map provides the same benefit as a map for a journey. It gives me a picture of where I'm going, making me less dependent on technological props and helping me to adapt to changing circumstances. I'll now look at each of the components of MAP in more detail. I know of several systems for qualifying objectives, with up to 9 categories of sub-objectives, if you please. However, I suggest that, for our purposes, a lot can be gained from focusing on just 3 things. Firstly, the my in my objectives reminds me that these are private objectives which may go beyond the meeting goals that I expose to my client when we meet. They could include, for example, convince my client that their project is doomed, or have my client pay extra for a software upgrade, which are aims that I wouldn't announce openly at the start of a meeting. This is okay. I can remain honest and authentic without being naively transparent. My objectives are also the immediate one. I'll say that again. My objectives are also the immediate ones for the encounter, rather than for the project with which it's connected. For example, if my project is a 10 million order that we hope to receive next year, my immediate objective will be something like obtain an introduction to the VP of R&D, or discover any technical obstacles to the sale. Focusing on immediate objectives restricts the scope of the map to the encounter concerned. Finally, my objectives should be multi-directional. Information I want from my client, information to give to them, and items to discuss or negotiate with them. This reflects the Discover, Inform, Negotiate trio that was associated with the do phase of the client encounter. We saw this in the last video. Whenever I work with customer-facing engineers on the MAP tool, I invariably find that they focus on the information they wish to give to clients, especially when the encounter preparation includes slide creation. Perhaps this is because people focus a bit too much on their own products and they want to impress the client with them. Or perhaps it's because they've forgotten how much information they're still lacking. Either way, both can be resisted by ensuring that my objectives are multi-directional. Of course, if I'm working in the encounter with colleagues, then my objectives means our joint objectives. In fact, MAP's particularly effective for collaborative work. It requires almost no time to learn, and it provides a simple structure for group discussions. The term audience is used here to mean the set of clients expected at the encounter. It could also be a real audience in the sense of one at a seminar or training course. Key data includes, for example, names with connections to other people, organisations and projects, questions to anticipate and obstacles that may arise, aims and priorities of their organisation, and unknowns about the audience. The key thing is to make a concerted effort to focus on the people that I'll meet, especially if I'm up to my neck in unrelated problems just before the encounter. I've got to get my mind to switch context before the meeting. And I can do this by visualising my audience, or remembering a conversation I've had with them, or perhaps by talking about them to someone. Just so long as I focus outwards towards my audience, rather than retreated inwards, absorbed by my own stuff. So I try to anticipate the audience's state of mind, the famous what's keeping them up at night, and also the things that they're likely to expect of me. If the encounter is particularly important and an in-depth analysis is desired, then there are many tools available for this. For example, you can try a web search for stakeholder analysis. These tools can be useful, especially when used with teams. Not because they're particularly accurate, but because of the collective effort to characterise the audience. Experience shows that this pays off handsomely when the client meeting takes place. But what if I don't have time to do any real audience preparation? No matter, even if my call is in just a couple of minutes, then I still try to form a mental picture of the people I'm about to meet, their situation, problems, needs, and I try to push other preoccupations to the back of my mind. I'm not a great fan of plans, at least not where planning becomes a substitute for action. No plan ever survived contact with the enemy, is a popular military saying, and it may sometimes seem that time spent preparing an encounter is wasted. However, an alternative quote from Dwight Eisenhower illustrates the value of the prepare step. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. For example, just a minute's thought before picking up the telephone can make a big difference to the outcome of a call. Encounter preparation time can vary widely according to the importance of the event, but it's always beneficial. And so some kind of plan is necessary. It must be suited to the task, and I can choose any planning tool I like. A friend of mine, Lynn Cooper, described the minimum requirement, which I call a first move plan. It consists of just a list of tasks to tackle, not prioritised, and a decision on which of them to do first. It's not a panacea, but it can be a great panic killer, allowing us to progress in situations that seem overwhelming. It's not a way out either, as I still have to think carefully and make the commitment to tackle whatever task is identified as being the most important. If something more elaborate than a first move plan is called for, several of the tools in the book are designed for use with MAP, and they plug right into the plan step. They are, for example, Page for planning the opening to meetings, Discover Why for structuring my learning discovery, the 2-minute message for preparing presentations, and Table for negotiation. Finally, there's the OR tool, which helps with obtaining help from within my own organisation. For all these tools, their use model starts with a definition of my objectives and audience, and then the plan part of MAP is implemented by the tool in question. Before finishing, just a quick slide to distinguish strategic from tactical preparation work. It's best not to confuse them, else I may feel well prepared for a meeting when in fact I've overlooked one or the other. Strategic preparation involves assessing goals and capabilities, analysing the characteristics and requirements of my client base, understanding my potential value to the audience, and working out how to transform this value into good business. It's usually not associated with a single encounter, but it's much more likely to be performed for a particular market or account. It's a long-term activity. On the other hand, when the hurry monster announces a meeting at the very last moment, then I reach for my map. This is tactical preparation, and it has to be done for each and every encounter. And that's why I suggest a tool and method that are so straightforward. The benefit of creating a map even extends into the encounter follow-up phase, since it gives some criteria by which I can judge the success of a meeting. Having explored the terrain, how did it compare to the map that I sketched before the expedition? This was the second of 6 videos on Encounter Basics. I highlighted the danger of the Get PowerPoint Slides approach to meeting preparation, and we then looked at the obvious alternative, a map. MAP is an acronym for My Objectives, Audience and Plan. My objectives should be private, not for client viewing, immediate, concerning just this encounter, and multi-directional, finding out, informing, and negotiating. A concerted effort to anticipate the audience's concerns and needs is extremely important too. It helps me to switch my mind away from other stuff, some complicated technical problem, for example. It's also crucial to have a plan, however modest or short-lived. First move plans are a minimum, and many of the Icon 9 tools can be used in the plan step of MAP.